tackle the feelings before the behaviour. My name's Paula and I'm a psychotherapist working with children and families with children under the age of 5 years old. And that's my area of interest. But the main area I work with is emotions and emotional regulation. So if you're interested in any of that, please check out my other videos. But today I really wanted to put a blog together around the signs and symptoms of anxiety in younger children. So I'm specifically going around under 6 years old, sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kids. Maybe it can be a bit older. And this can relate to everybody because a lot of these symptoms follow us. Anxiety is anxiety, but there are specific symptoms that you will see in young kids. And what I'm finding, and this might be a bit controversial, but I know a lot of professionals and parents are agreeing with me, that we are sort of misdiagnosing a little bit or self-diagnosing anxiety symptoms as something like a disability, like Autism Spectrum Disorder or ADHD or something along those lines, that there's something wrong developmentally with the child. And people go down that path, and I've got families that keep getting sent down this path only to be told, no, it's not that, there are delays, but there's nothing there. And I've seen people who've been sent down this path and got a diagnosis, and I've looked at reports and thought, I don't know how they reached that conclusion. I do trust the assessment process is very stringent for autism, but we kind of have a big overlap of symptoms. And a lot of parents feel a lot of relief when they hear about anxiety symptoms and that this could be anxiety. And so I want to start by saying that I'm not going to go into the causes of why children have anxiety, except to say that in young children in their formative years, anxiety is pretty much a given. And that is because you're dependent at that age. And whenever we as human beings are dependent on someone else for our survival, if we get that relationship sort of shaky, or if we're apart from that person or something happens and our needs aren't being met, we're going to feel anxiety, and this comes from a place of survival. So children are inherently quite anxious in general. Babies are anxious. That's not to say it's anxiety disorder and they're mentally ill. It just means that there's a lot of worry and stress and overwhelm and all that kind of thing that happens for children. So the way I'm going to do it is split it into the 3 levels, or 3 sections, should I say: mental, emotional, and physical or behavioural. And so I'm just going to go through them. This is from my experience and my training. I haven't gone online and Googled and got those symptoms. This is from what I see and what I do and my training coupled with my experience, because I work with a lot of anxious children. I work with a lot of separation anxieties, tantrums, co-sleeping, that kind of thing. So to start with, the core emotion of anxiety is fear. So that's not to say that a child is terrified of the world in the sense that we like watch horror movies and get that real fear. This also relates to instability, insecurity, a lack of emotional safety. And so to understand anxiety is to understand fear a bit more. And I talk about this in other blogs that I do about fear. I talk about anxiety quite a bit because it's one of the most common things that I see. So in the mental space, when we have anxiety, we often have what we call ruminating. And this happens for young kids too. Although when you're under 5 years old, your brain's not really developed. That neocortex part of your brain is not very developed. So you feel everything in your limbic system and your brain stem, which is your emotions and your physical. But that doesn't mean we can't fixate on certain things, and especially little kids as they're nearing 4, 5 years old. That worry sort of fixates, and ruminating is when things go round and round and round and you can't let it go. So you'll see children going on and asking the same things over and over again. Now, repetition is common and needed because we're creating neural pathways and dominant ways of thinking as we're learning. But when a kid can't grasp something, or they're going on about the bad guys coming into the house, or zombies, or are you going to leave me, or where's my blanket, and on and on and on and on, that's kind of like a form of ruminating. Another thing is avoidance. Now, this is huge in kids and adults and just about everybody in between. It's a big part of anxiety. And I like to explain it like a sponge, when a sponge is full of water already, just the tiniest little drop is going to, when it's already saturated, is going to feel huge. And so our coping mechanism is to avoid getting any more stimulation, avoid anything more coming in. And out of fear, we avoid as well. We try to avoid those situations that are going to make us fearful. So you get not wanting to go out of the house, not wanting to leave you, not wanting to do things that they wanted to do, to play certain games that might have a level of risk. Avoiding a lot of different things is very common. The thinking with anxiety, and because we move out of our thinking brain and into our emotional systems and our brainstem in general when we're anxious, because this is how we survive, because thinking is actually quite slow. So if you're putting your hand on a hot oven plate, if it went through your cortex and your thinking, your hand would be burnt by the time your body got the message to move it. But when it's in your brainstem, instantly you're moving your hand away. And it's the same thing, which means that we have a lot of scattered thinking. We have a lot of lack of focus, which can look like intellectual delays and problems at school. And what I see is often very intelligent children when they're doing my emotion book activity or something with me and at the home, because I see people in their homes, they are very, very on the ball. They're fine. But the feedback from childcares and kindergartens and preschools and things come from, they think that these kids are not going to be school ready, that there are problems with their learning. Because when you're anxious, you can't focus. Again, you're out of your thinking brain and into survival. So it's a coping mechanism, and it's a very clever one, and it will, back in caveman days, it saved lives. So you're going to see intellectual delays with anxiety, which is why it can parallel with autism and disability and delays and things like that. You also see that fixation, like I said, on monsters, bad guys, and children have a very big imagination. And so they struggle to decipher sort of the dream world from reality, because in the first 3 years especially, we're learning more than we've ever learned before. There's so much to take on and not that brain development to process and make sense of it. So there's a lot going on mentally. Emotionally, there is as well. We see clinginess and separation anxiety, where the child doesn't want to leave your side, or they find their favorite adult and they're going to latch on to people they feel safe with because they need that safety. They're trying to get that safety, so it can feel very, very intense. And parents who are at home with their kids all day, this can be huge. So separation anxiety, when they don't want to go to childcare, it's a very big process. Parents have to sort of trick their children to leave. There's a lot of distress. There's also a lack of being able to regulate yourself as a child in general, regulate those emotions, calm yourself down. So once they sort of hit that distress, it's very difficult to calm back down. So there's a lot of overwhelm where tasks just become really huge for children and they don't want to do things, and that can be very frustrating. There's jealousy, which is another expression of fear, where they get jealous of their friends, of you, of the time you're spending with a sibling, especially if there's a new baby. There's a lot of anxiety when a new baby gets born, school transitions, any changes. We get a lot of anxiety and a lot of overwhelm, a lot of jealousy. We also can get bossiness. So bossiness comes from a need for control, because when we're anxious, we feel out of control. So children try to exert that control in other ways, and it can look attention seeking. It can look really like they're just being real little brats, but actually that is them trying to assert power and control to regain a sense of emotional safety, to feel in control again, which we all do to an extent. We do this in different ways and sometimes more destructive ways as adults. We also see a lot of worry about certain things, worry about things coming up, and this can really play on a child's mind, especially at nighttime. Nighttime's usually very hard because we have those fears of the dark, of monsters, of being apart from you. That's why we get co-sleeping issues, which I will talk about in behaviour. So we can also get a lot of secondary emotions that come up, anger, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame in who they are, just feeling really insecure about themselves. And that's with everyone with anxiety. You don't feel very stable when you're feeling anxious. So in terms of physical, this is where we mistake this for naughty behaviors, bad behaviors, and we do the mistake of punishing children and need to enforce discipline and teach them. But what we're doing when we punish and we spank and we isolate them from us and in time out and things like that is we create more anxiety and we shame them. We make them feel bad for feeling that insecurity inside, and we perpetuate it, which doesn't come out really often till later in life, or the behaviors seem to increase, and you project that onto, you think it's the child, but actually it's the anxiety, and it's good to separate that. We can see anxiety is very physical. So a lot of stomach issues, and I always say to people when I'm giving seminars and things, the stomach issues are real. The stomach is sore, is knots. We do get upset tummies. It actually is physical, but there's no biological cause outside of that anxiety because your body has gone into stress. You get the shakes, you tremble, your heart beats. You just don't feel very stable physically when you're anxious because you're working from that brainstem. You're in survival and you can't relax. So kids do feel sick, and that avoidance comes hand in hand with those stomach issues. They don't want to go somewhere, they feel sick, they get headaches, they feel nauseous. That's all very normal, and you'll find if you calm them down, get them back into their sort of more rational side and everything, the stomach issues tend to go away. So usually when they're staying home from school, 10 minutes later they want to play, you think they're being cheeky and you've been played. No, they actually do feel better. So it's good to be mindful of that. You can get a lot of hyperactivity and acting out because they don't know how to manage these feelings. They don't often know what's going on for them. And kids can't process and make meaning out of what's going on. So it looks like acting out. We see tantrums. Fear is the cause of tantrums, and that inability to make sense of those really big emotions. So tantrums come out, and all that meltdowns and yelling and shouting and being destructive and acting out, all that happens, that anger comes out. It looks like anger, but really it's coming from a place of just not being able to regulate and manage those emotions on top of all that stuff going on for them mentally. It all comes together. So you see a lot of bad behavior, and I always say do not punish. What we need to do is help kids to regulate, manage those emotions. We see sleep issues because, again, we're acting from that survival state. We don't get sleepy when we've got adrenaline pumping through us and fight, flight, or freeze mode. We are ready for action. We're ready to tackle those threats. So sleep issues, loss of appetite, all of that comes in with the stomach issues as well. Sensitive children who are more tuned and more empathic will often have sensitivities to different foods, textures, all that kind of thing. So please watch my video on sensitive children as well, a few videos back, because that is very common and can also look like autism, where you get odd behaviors, sensitivities, not wanting certain color foods, all of that. It's just really sensitive to the environment. You get all of that. You also get, which is coupled with autism, is a lack of being able to be sociable, not making friends, and that comes from overwhelm. That comes from not wanting to be apart from you, not feeling safe, not feeling confident, feeling a lot of fear, being cautious. So not wanting to try new things and feeling really insecure about your abilities. As a child, we get a lot of that. So with the sleep issues as well, you'll often find that co-sleeping, wanting to sleep with you all the time. And so it's really about tackling that fear and anxiety in order to get your child back into bed. So we also find a lot of need for security items and things that make children feel safe, and need for connection with you. And often it's so smothering, and you've got them on you the whole time, that clinginess. Emotionally, you're pulling away. So it all perpetuates the cycle. So there's a lot of symptoms of anxiety, and it's really good to understand these things so that you can soothe it, because there's actually very easy ways to help your children feel safe again. I've got a blog on how to create emotional safety for your kids. There's videos on here to help you, and I'll make more videos as I go along. So I hope that's been helpful. Have a good week. Bye.